AMEC, and we are a member-based organisation that supports mining and advocates for the mining industry. So just here we have Nicola Frazer, who's the CFO of Barton Gold. Nicola is a chartered accountant with over 25 years corporate finance experience in South Australia's mining and oil and gas sectors. Nicola joins Barton as it moved into early analysis, financial optimisation and development planning for its large-scale Tunkillia gold project, where initial scoping studies are currently underway. From 1998 to 2007, Nicola was a manager of business development and investor relations for Normandy Mining. And from 2009 to 2020, a senior commercial advisor at Beach Energy, and most recently, associate director with KPMG's government incentives and grants, where she focused on securing non-dilutive state and federal government funding incentives for South Australian commercialisation and development initiatives. Nicola will play a key role in Barton's corporate and project-level development initiatives and financing strategies as the company leads the development of a new large-scale gold industry in the Central Gawler Craton. Thanks for joining us, Nicola. It's great to have you here. And we have Sonja Neame, who's the Chief Operating Officer of Larvotto Resources. So you just heard Roland speak about Larvotto and their great project that they're currently working on. Sonja is an accomplished mining executive and company director with over 25 years global experience and cross-functional leadership. She is recognised for her strategic leadership, operational excellence and project development skills, promoting a culture of high achievement and delivering operational successes. Sonja's leadership abilities have facilitated the development of businesses, identifying opportunities for growth, partnerships, M&A, IPOs and global business development. Since listing on the ASX in December 2021, Larvotto Resources has transformed from a junior explorer to developer, having acquired the Hillgrove Gold and Antimony mine that we just heard about. Welcome, Sonja. And we have Karina Bader next, who's a senior analyst from Acorn Capital. Karina is the senior analyst at Acorn, where she has been conducting investment research on companies and the selection of investments for client portfolios in the resources and energy sectors since 2009. Prior to joining Acorn Capital, Karina began her career 30 years ago as a geologist working on various mine sites.
Shouldn't have written that, should I?
She holds a Bachelor of Science and MBA and is also a graduate of the AICD. Karina's really passionate about the social and environmental impact of investments in the resources and energy sector, along with a keen focus on governance. So Karina's got some great information for us today. And last but certainly not least is Gillian Terry, General Manager of Geology, Kingsgate Consolidated Limited. Jill's a geologist with over 39 years experience across mine, project, resource and exploration geology, including throughout Australia, PNG, Thailand and Laos. Jill commenced her career as a mine geologist with Newmont Holdings at Telfer and previously held global technical positions including VP Geoscience and VP Technical Capability at BHP before joining Newcrest Mining as Head of Mineral Resource Management. She was also a non-executive director of London Gold in 2023. Jill also holds postgrad qualifications in mineral economics, and she's a fellow of the Oz IMM and has been an active member of the JORC Executive Committee since 2011. She chaired the ESG subcommittee for the JORC Code update. So we've got some great experience, so let's get into it here. So let's kick off first by defining sustainability. Sonja, did you want to give us an answer to that one?
Sure. So sustainability in mining involves a focus on balancing economic, environmental and social factors. Mining operations must be economically sustainable, ensuring that they can be profitable while providing jobs and contributing to the local and national economy. In many countries, including Australia, probably especially Australia, stringent regulations that govern mining practices requires companies to adhere to specific sustainability standards and reporting. There's strong emphasis on minimising environmental impact, such as land degradation, water pollution and biodiversity loss. This also includes responsible mineral extraction and rehabilitation of mine sites, particularly when they close. Mining companies are expected to be socially responsible, engaging with local communities, respecting First Nations people's rights and land use, and ensuring that local populations benefit. Sustainability also involves the use of advanced technologies to improve efficiency and reduce environmental impact. An example is Rio and BHP's autonomous haulage systems, which have significantly improved productivity, safety, and reduced operational costs.
Thanks, Sonja. Nicola, can you tell us what the key principles of sustainability are?
Well, as Sonja mentioned,
Yes.
so ESG is the typical way we describe sustainability in a sort of more succinct and understandable fashion. So the environment part, which is mostly, at the moment, the big focus is on climate change. So there's a lot of reporting obligations that are associated with that, and a lot of other sustainability reports for big companies obviously focus on climate and environment. The social side, which is the way we interact with our stakeholders, which is more around engagement without agenda, I think is probably the key element of the social engagement. And as one very smart person once said to me, you have to develop a relationship first and then ask later. So that's really the key, I think, to successful social relations. And the G for governance, which is pretty all-encompassing, and a lot of it is around compliance, but also about doing the right thing and creating a culture that's going to support not only a compliant operation, but also one that is operating in a fashion that is going to stand it in good stead and make it a sustainable operation as well. So they're the key.
Thank you.
keys.
Thanks, Nicola.
Yeah.
Gillian, you're in an interesting position. Kingsgate has recently come out of a long period of care and maintenance. It'd be great to hear from you what Kingsgate's potentially going to be doing differently after that period of care and maintenance.
Thank you. I think it's worth stating that the world has changed a lot in the area of ESG and perception of sustainability and expectations of the industry since the mine ceased operation in 2016 before it started again last year. I guess we've got the advantage of having had prior operating experience, having had the experience of working with the local stakeholders, so the landowners, the local communities, and we understand what we need to do to meet our sustainability commitments with respect to regulators, government, as I mentioned, community, and other stakeholders, and also to provide the best returns for our shareholders. I think I'll speak more about the specific initiatives because I know there's a question coming up. The other thing I'd just like to note, I'm very passionate about the future of our industry, and hence my last position in BHP. It's really great to see that we've been joined by some school students this afternoon, because
absolutely,
that's the future of our industry.
Thank you, Gillian. And Karina, did you want to talk about just high-level overview of sustainability before we get into a little bit more detail?
Thanks, Kerry. I'll talk about it from an investment point of view.
Thank you.
Obviously, working for Acorn Capital, our clients who engage us to manage their money are laser focused on ESG, and I'd say we have quarterly, at a minimum, conversations with our clients around what we are doing as fund investors on ESG initiatives. It is a challenge because we're a micro-cap focused investor, which it means we're generally investing in companies that are outside the ASX 250, and that it covers all gamuts of companies from a couple of million market cap through up to about $1 billion. And quite clearly they have different capability, they have different resourcing available to them in order to address the ESG element. I am particularly investing in the resources and energy space, and I think we are very much under the microscope in how we invest. Some of our clients choose to use a negative screening methodology where it's explicitly stated in our investment mandates, no thermal coal, which we absolutely recognise and enact in our investment process. Others don't have such explicit negative screens, but they do want to be ensured or by us that we are using ESG principles. And for us in particular as investors, we follow more of a responsible investment approach. It's very hard to be prescriptive as an investor because no two companies are alike. And clearly I think that between producers, developers and explorers, there's quite a difference in how each of those companies can actually engage with ESG. And I think when you're in the exploration phase, there are clear areas where it's more important in terms of social licence, engagement with community and permitting and approvals pathways, developers, permitting and approvals and social licence, but also the ability to finance, and then there's a whole heap of engineering and technical aspects that need to get across the line for those developments to progress. And then once you're a producer, you know, you've got safety, you've got quite a much broader remit, and you've also got resources in which you can apply to it. So it's quite nuanced, I think, from an investor point of view. I don't think you can take one checklist and say all resource companies should be able to tick off all of these aspects. You have to understand where the company is at and what stage of development it's at, and what its capability and how much money and resourcing it has at its fingertips in order to address those issues.
Thank you. So we know that gold mining can be sustainable if proper practices and technologies are used to minimise environmental impacts. What are some sustainable practices of gold mining? Sonja, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Well, a couple of points. Conducting environmental impact assessments, identify critical habitats and ecosystems before, during and after mining activities. Another one is being energy efficient, utilising renewable sources, solar, wind to power mining operations, and that reduces our carbon footprint and reliance on fossil fuels.
Thank you. Gillian, did you have some comments there?
I do. So just to set the scene, Chartree is situated within a provincial agricultural area where we're mining effectively rice paddy fields. So we have to be very mindful of our community stakeholders, and the community really is 28 villages and over 14,000 people. So we actively engage on an incredibly regular basis with the community. We also offer an open door policy with respect to mine visits. It's all about education and being transparent about what we do. Some of the initiatives that are part of our day-to-day operations is that with excellent technical work, we can optimise our footprint, which means we only mine what we need to. It also minimises our strip ratio. So good technical work means that we mine in the right place at the right time. With respect to cyanide, because we're a carbon in leach and require cyanide as part of our processing operation, we manage the cyanide in our tailings. That's our limit, and we stick beneath that limit and watch it very closely, is 20 parts per million. So for the foodies amongst you, that's the sort of concentration of cyanide that you would actually ingest if you eat a lot of almonds or stone fruits. We recycle all of our processing chemicals, and we also use microorganisms to degrade any of the free cyanide molecules. So we actually have bird populations that live on our tailings storage facilities and are very healthy. With respect to water, that's another big consideration for a mining operation. We have a nil release model. So we harvest rainwater, and we obviously have groundwater that we can use as well. With our processing, we use thickeners to remove water from tailings before we release them to the TSF. We reuse approximately 50% of the total water that we process each month, which is actually very impressive. With respect to dust needs to be considered. We spray, using part of that water, spray working faces and also roads to keep dust down. We revegetate, basically as soon as you plant something, it grows like a beanstalk, so that's very helpful with respect to dust management. With respect to noise, we have small blasts. We've got the new mining equipment, so that actually helps as well. And we restrict some activities. For example, and this was, I was educated on this after I started with Kingsgate. The question was, why are we not drilling after 10 p.m? Again, it's to manage noise. Likewise, with respect to vibration, small blasts help with that. And we also have a model where we empower local communities. So the operations generate over 10 million Australian dollars per month, which goes back into the local communities in terms of employment and local business support. And we have a local community development support fund, which puts funding into things like education, infrastructure support and projects.
Thank you, Jill. So many great examples of sustainability there, and I didn't know that about almonds. It freaked me out a bit because I do eat a lot of them. Karina, would you like to talk about sustainability in practices of gold mining at all?
Yeah, I think it's probably worth reflecting on a recent site visit I did to Western Australia, where I visited 5 different mine sites, and it was really quite, I found it really educational. And the core thing that I took away from it was all of the 5 mine sites had actually been mined multiple times over the last few decades and then shut down for various reasons and then restarted up. 3 in particular had built new mines plant through COVID, which of course was a challenging time for all of our miners when restrictions came enforced. But what that allowed those companies to do, because they had been mined previously, they had existing mining licences, they had existing roads, they had existing tailings dams, which they're currently repurposing and reusing, they had existing office and admin or camp, power, access to power. So the actual impact of the restart of these operations, even though there was new plant and new design, was minimised, given that they were now operating in a previously mined jurisdiction. And given, and I'm sure it's quite topical, social licence to operate and the ability to get things permitted, being able to go into an existingly affected area and then turn a mine back on is a lot easier than starting in a greenfields operation and getting approvals for that. The other aspect that I took note of was that they're all considering renewable / gas / diesel generator models. Bellevue had the largest one and was being built as I went through. Red 5 already had an existing solar renewable energy solution. Pantoro was considering it. Karora was considering it, and Northern Star also had access to gas from the grid. And in fact, they generate the energy that goes to Kalgoorlie mine site itself. So if they go down, then Kalgoorlie goes down. So they are an energy provider of the community. So again, those companies are focused on delivering for carbon emissions for their projects. They're trying to minimise their physical impacts by reusing existing facilities. And then the other aspect was around safety, which was front of mind in every operation I went in. First thing you do when you go on site now is do a blow test. Everyone who went to site has to do a test. But in particular, I'll call out Northern Star and Bellevue had 40% female representation in their companies, which is well above the industry average, and are continuing to focus on those. And of course, all companies were focused on in trying to engage the local Indigenous communities by giving them contracts or building up their capacity so they could run contracts in their local community so that they could work and stay where they have grown up.
Fantastic examples. Nicola, did you want to add to anything there?
I did, yes. I guess Barton is a slightly different company. You talked, Karina, about the differences between operating companies and exploration companies. We're an exploration and early stage developer. And we have mine sites that are in care and maintenance. So we're planning for the future. A lot of our ESG work is with regard to strategy. So some of the stuff we've done in our exploration is that we've employed new technology to try and be more efficient with regard to what we do. So reducing the number of drill holes by doing some seismic analysis, which is sort of something that's slightly unusual for a mining enterprise. And we're also investing in in-field assaying, so using portable PPB, which are represented here, so that's nice. So that allows us to get our results more quickly, and then we can target our drilling accordingly while we're in field. So that's sort of a useful efficiency for us. And also we're working with CSIRO on near surface sampling and employing AI, which is another R&D activity, analysis of our large data sets. So that's been something that's sort of new that we're able to do to sort of, as a smaller company, sort of employing the technology has enabled us to do things more efficiently, but without having to spend so much money. So that's been a useful exercise for Barton. And the other thing we're doing is we're evaluating when we start developing our mine in the future. We're looking at alternative power sources for the Gawler central mill that we've got when that restarts, and including LNG. So that's a gas alternative, obviously, to the diesel, which it was previously operated with. And also we're looking at toll treatment, which will reduce the footprint in the region for our neighbours as well, so less need to invest in milling capacity elsewhere. And we hope that'll have this sort of industry multiplier effect, not only the technology that we're kind of helping to prove, but also the use of the mill by neighbours as well. So there's some of the things
that's great. Doing. Thank you, Nicola. I was just going to ask you each for a case study about building a sustainable mining sector. Sonja, did you have a case study? I think your current project might be one, or you've visited a great mine in New Zealand as well that we'd love to hear about.
I did, yes. So for me, I think quite special is, and I see the similarity to Larvotto's Hillgrove mine in terms of mines that can coexist within close town sites, is the Martha mine that's currently owned by Oceana Gold in a town called Waihi in New Zealand. Similarly, the mine has been operational on and off since 1879, and it's supported small businesses and stimulated the local economy and provided lots of job opportunities. But what I found special when I visited Waihi was that this mine, how it effectively integrates with the town site. It's a pleasant place to visit. It's right on the edge of the town, and locals and visitors can walk around the pathway around the perimeter of the open pit, amongst beautiful bushland, as well as pass by farming property. So the mine's contributed to local employment and community, but it's a scenic recreational opportunity. And when I was there was cyclists, joggers, dogs being walked, families, young and old, all enjoying bushland on one side, mining operation on the other. And there was also a fence line, paying tribute to fallen soldiers during World War I and II. So, I just think it's a fabulous example of how mining can coexist with regional towns and agriculture.
Absolutely, and you've made us all want to visit it now. Yeah. It sounds beautiful.
I had an example, from Waihi as well, because I visited there a long time ago when I was at Normandy Mining, and Normandy actually undertook to move the old pump house at Waihi at the Martha mine. I think it was called Martha Hill then. I don't think it's a hill anymore. So it's all mined out. But they had a big historic pump house that it must have cost the company a fortune that they had to move over to get to the mineralisation that was underneath it. So another sort of sustainability example of preserving some history. It's a really great site.
Thank you. And Gillian, you've got some great experience, case studies to talk about, haven't you?
I have. So I guess a few examples during my career. When I was at Octedi in the very early 2000s, Octedi is a very, very wet location, and so we had hydropower which powered our shovels and also our processing plant. We did have to have diesel backup for restarting mills, and indeed when we had one El Nino, which meant we had no rain, and therefore we reverted to diesel power. But it was really great to see that we were utilising the natural resources to provide our energy. Another really impressive example, I had the opportunity to visit LKAB's Northern Sweden operations at Malmberget and Karina in 2017, and they have converted almost entirely to electric underground iron ore mining, so that was really, really impressive to see. And then most recently, when I was with Newcrest, we purchased a Canadian company called Pretium Resources. We did that to take over their Brucejack deposit, which sits on top of a glacier in British Columbia. Pretium had already committed to moving their mining or their fleet of trucks for their underground mining operation to electric trucks. So they had 50-tonne Volvo trucks that we commissioned after we took over the company. And sure, it was obviously reducing our diesel emissions, but the amazing flow-on from that was that the air was so clean underground, and we therefore required less ventilation, therefore less energy consumption to move further out in the mine compared to what we would have been able to do had we continued with a fully diesel fleet. So for me, that was a double whammy. It was a really unexpected positive additional outcome of moving to electric trucks.
Yeah, that's a great example. Thank you, Jill. Karina, did you have any case studies you wanted to share?
Yeah, I probably mentioned a few earlier,
Yes.
but what I'd draw out from some of that, and given the examples already provided today, I'd say scale does matter, and especially when it comes to the implementation of some of these what we call ESG initiatives, is if you've got the 10-year mine life, you can afford to invest in that upfront capital to put in the renewable energy system. For example, with Bellevue, where they're installing like a 7 megawatt system, which they believe will, and that's a combination of solar and wind, and they believe that will actually power the whole processing plant during the day. But they could only do that because they had a 10-year mine life, and the capital to build that plant was going to be able to be paid off in the life of that mine. And so when we talk about more generally in the industry, I do think that if you've got a 3-year mine life, it's very hard to justify implementing some of these initiatives, but if you've got the 10-year mine life, you can. And we are actually seeing that today, where we've had Red 5 and Silver Lake merge, West Gold and Karora merge, and they are getting to scale, and I think we'll see more of that happening over the coming years, and part of that is about efficiency, productivity, and the ability to invest in these initiatives, because I know Wayne at West Gold has talked to me multiple times about implementing even a hybrid truck system, which will ultimately reduce their emissions underground, which then means they need less ventilation, which of course leads to less energy use, and they're not the only ones. I know that the copper mine here in New South Wales, CSA, are looking at implementing the same thing.
Yes.
So it is well and truly front and centre of the mind of management of these companies, but the asset has to actually have the ability to underpin the economics of that, implementing those initiatives.
That's a great reminder. Thank you for that example. I was just going to ask you all now if gold can be recycled. What are your thoughts on this, Jill?
Oh, so it certainly can. If you look back through history, the Vikings, the Egyptians, the Greeks have been recycling gold through smelting for many, many, many centuries. And I think today the stats are that in terms of what's recycled, about 90% is jewellery and 10% is recycled electronics. So absolutely we can.
Fantastic. Karina? Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think pretty much all the gold that's ever been mined is still available to be reused.
Anything from you, Sonja, on that one?
A different way. Historic tailings can be reprocessed using new processing techniques and technology. At Hillgrove, we're currently working with government regulations seeking planning approval to build a new tailings dam. The current tailings dam that is permitted sits on the edge of a 400-metre gorge, so we intend to retreat or recycle those tailings and extract that gold and reduce any potential environmental impact that could impose.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and I guess similar to Sonja's example there at Barton, we're also trying to maximise our assets at sort of the now closed Challenger operation by cleaning out all the remnant gold in the circuit and evaluating reprocessing of tailings and waste stockpiles in a similar way, but also divesting any scrap materials that we have and any unused assets that can be used immediately by another operation rather than just sitting at our site waiting for the time when we may one day use them. So trying to maximise our assets at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Look, we may have answered this one in a couple of the answers already, but what are current companies doing to reduce their impact on the environment? And it's probably going to be electrification, small mining footprint, etc. Did anyone have any other comments on that one? And if not, we can go to the next question.
Yeah, I guess I thought about, as I mentioned earlier, about exploration efficiency. So that was sort of one thing that I think our company's doing, particularly because we are, pretty conservative and watching every dollar of our shareholders' money.
Yeah.
Trying to do things more efficiently, I guess, was where I came from for that one.
Yeah, I might have another example of that. Red 5 have implemented a drone surveying trial. It's still under trial. They're testing it out because part of their mine sits in an ultramafic unit and it's very unstable. So they know that monitoring the pit wall is necessary for their open cut mine, but they're implementing drones doing it, and the ability for the drone to collect live data which can then be processed back to the surveyors immediately online, which is both a safety but also a management and then an efficiency, because it can be done so much faster than a human going out to try and monitor and write it all down and put it into the system later in the day.
Oh, that's very exciting.
Probably just a technology comment that I guess as technology improves over time, there are certainly some studies that are even looking at muon technology in terms of more selective mining. So bigger is not necessarily better. It is actually about keep that footprint as small as you can and don't move, realms of unnecessary waste. So I think in the next decade or so, we're going to see a significant change in terms of how the industry actually does extract ore.
And why should investors care about sustainability anyway? Nicola, did you want to kick us off on that?
Well, clearly it's better for the planet, and we're all inhabitants, so it's a generally a good social endeavour for investors to care about sustainability, and I guess it's also a lot of investment funds, and probably Karina might be a better person to respond to this, to be honest, but have that mandate, so that would be a driver. But I might kick over to you for this.
Yeah, sure, thank you. Yeah, our investors are laser focused on ESG. They understand the science, and they understand the need for change, and it is very difficult to bring about that change industry-wide because of the reasons we've already spoken about in terms of capacity and resources. I do think that the incidence of climate change events are clearly, from a physical asset point of view, having more and more of an impact. You saw Gold Road knocked out for almost 2 months of mining because of the road getting washed away, and they couldn't bring supplies in or get supplies out. You saw 29 Metals have a flood event, which is now 2 years before that can be, hasn't even been rectified yet. So I do think that both investors and companies are seeing that there are these impacts that can happen, and they clearly have a significant impact, not on evaluation, but clearly the people who worked at those operations and their ability to respond or address them. And so the industry itself recognises it needs to become more mature and develop its skill sets to respond to these incidences, which could be accelerating, could be more extreme, could be more frequent. I do feel that, and in particular our clients and investors are focused on that physical aspect impact, because clearly that impacts their fiduciary duty, which is around generating retirement returns for their members.
And we've got some standardised reporting coming up soon, haven't we? I don't know if you'd like to touch on that.
Yes, and I actually think that is a great good, whether you agree with the definitions or whether you agree with the mechanism. From an investor point of view, what I would like to see is consistency of reporting, and if everyone's reporting the same way with the same definitions, we can then start as investors and as a society properly being able to actually compare apples to apples. The issue at the moment is there's so many different forms of reporting on ESG, there's no standard terminology, there's different frameworks, there's different reporting mechanisms, and it's great all these companies are putting out sustainability reports, but as an investor, they're all different, so you can't actually compare them with each other. And so how do you say who's best in class, who's doing the best? And again, for the industry, how do they say they're the best, we're going to inspire to be like that, and here's their template, let's use that. So I feel that the standardised reporting will assist with that in the longer run.
Totally agree with you. And Jill, you might like to talk to us about the JORC code and the recent proposed updates, which you've been working hard on for a couple of years, I guess.
Yeah, so that was a great segue. I mean, it is about our licence to operate, and so as we started the process of updating what will be the 25 version of the JORC code back in 2020, we actually started the process. I put my hand up to lead the ESG working group, and the working groups for each of the key areas that are proposed to change within the JORC code were filled by volunteers. My group was almost 50 people within 4 different streams across ESG that really looked at what as an industry do we need to require our competent persons to report on so that we actually meet the JORC code requirements of transparency and materiality as well as competency of the people who are doing the reporting. And so we brought in, I had financial people, I had ESG specialists, I had mining engineers, geologists in the various working groups. We did actually bring in some people from superannuation funds and investment houses to talk to us about where they saw the industry going from their perspective, and they were very clear, as has been mentioned before, that there's an increasing demand for the investor funds to go to companies that are not just talking about getting it right, but actually have budgets and plans in place to do what they say they're going to do to meet sustainability requirements. And indeed, we also saw examples where companies were greenwashing to try to get investor dollars, and they were getting speeding tickets from ASIC for basically spruiking and not having any tangible plans or budgets to actually achieve what they were promising. So with that as our context, then yes, we did have a look at how many different articles or guidelines or standards were out there, and we actually stopped at 90. So there's probably easily double that. So what we have done is, and this is a plug for the draft JORC code is out for a 3-month period for stakeholder feedback across various stakeholders who use the JORC code for reporting or use it for investment purposes, etc. Please have a read, and if you go onto the JORC website, you can download the revised proposed draft JORC code. We also have, and this is a really useful tool, I think, we have guidance notes, and this is a new development for the JORC code, so it's not just about what you need to do to achieve the JORC requirements, it's also about how you should go about achieving the JORC requirements. Within the guidance notes, we've produced a matrix specifically for ESG, which is if you're at the exploration stage or you're at the producing stage in terms of reserves and ultimately through to closure, or if you're working through estimation of resources, it gives a checklist of the things that you as a practitioner need to consider in each of the E, S and G areas, so that you can look at that before you start a piece of work. That will actually give you some guidance around what you need to be considering to actually achieve not just your reporting outcomes, but the piece of work that you need to do. We've also made allowance for competent persons to lean on specialists to inform them, particularly in areas, for example, not many geologists would actually be able to go out, myself included, would be able to go out and do a biodiversity survey for an area that they're proposing to explore in. You need to lean on a specialist to assist with that piece of work, and there will be a requirement for those specialists to be part of a member organisation, for example, the AusIMM, where there is actually a code of ethics and disciplinary procedures, if you're not prepared to stand behind the work that you do to provide that for the competent person. So we're just getting basically all our ducks in line. ESG requirements will sit firmly under modifying factors, and there will be an expectation that you will report in terms of if not, why not, and indeed if so, why so, context as we go forward as an industry. That will hopefully help to avoid some of the, and we've talked about a few of them today, some of the problems that we have seen across the industry. The industry needs to build more trust with stakeholders in the broad community, government, etc. And hopefully the changes that we're proposing to the JORC Code will actually help the industry to help itself in terms of future licence to operate.
Thanks, Jill. We really look forward to going through the draft guidelines as a member organisation and putting forward our response. So thank you very much for that. We've only got a couple of minutes left. Were there any key takeaways for the audience on sustainability from anyone?
I guess the key I wanted to pass on was that technology is the key to some of the sustainability efforts going forward, so that like I suggested, it can be done more efficiently, and we can explore new ways of doing things. Necessity is the mother of invention, and I think we've reached the point where necessity is kicking in, and there's some good, efficient new technology out there that I think needs to be embraced.
That's a great point. Thank you, Nicola.
Spread throughout the industry.
And just following on that companies that are innovative and adopt sustainable practices in an effective manner are more likely to be, economically sustainable and potentially more profitable.
Absolutely. And Karina, anything from you?
I think one of the key things I'd like the audience to take away today is that the industry is laser focused on this issue, as are the investors who are investing in it. But I do think we need to be aware that there should be some nuance in the response. A junior explorer with a 10 million market cap and $1 million in the bank is clearly not capable of providing the same level of resourcing to ESG considerations as a BHP or a Rio, and so they shouldn't be held to the same standard. But clearly social licence and trust in the industry is a community trust is a key issue, as we've seen recently, and it is an ongoing issue, and S&P regularly puts out reports. It now takes 16 years to get a mine approved from discovery to production. And I'm pretty sure that is only going one way, and that's a global issue. So it's not just in Australia, that is globally, and certainly in my time as an investor over almost 15 years, that permitting process has become much more extenuated. And I do believe that is going to drive a supply side issue in due course. Already is in some sectors, but will continue to do so. And so yes, mining of these scarce resources is, in an ESG way, is extremely important, but at the same time, it can't be to the point where you can't actually process these chemicals so that they can be used by people in their phones and their cars and their houses.
Absolutely. Any key takeaways from you, Jill?
Look, I think everyone else has pretty much said it. I guess a key takeaway for me is that it's not someone else's problem. The future of our industry actually lies with everyone in this room. We do need to own it, but it does need to be pragmatic as well. So.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to quickly mention that tonight our CEO, Warren Pearce, will be on Channel 7 at about 6 o'clock or just after, talking about the McPhillamys decision, if anyone's interested in seeing the response to that, given that Jim Bayer is AMEC's president. I'd just really like to thank all of the panellists and encourage you to all go along to the booths and meet Barton Gold, Larvotto Resources, Acorn Capital and Kingsgate Resources. Thank you very much, everyone. Really appreciate it. Thank you.